Okay, welcome everyone to our coffee talk. We are, oh, Marie. Today's class is sponsored by the Sachs family in honor of all of those celebrating birthdays and all of those that had babies and all those people that are doing unwell. We're wishing them a refuah shlema. For those people that need to have a aliyah for the neshamot, for those that are mourning for a loved one, their neshamot should have aliyah. This is a general purpose class for all those that need whatever they need. Hashem should bless them with happiness and health and success and whatever they need to find their unique path in this world.
Thank you to you guys.
Well, it's our pleasure, our pleasure. Lots of love, Marie. All right, so we are talking about abortion, and this is a very detailed class. There's very little room here for inspiration. This class is more about understanding the nature of the topic itself. So we broke it down I broke this down into several sections. First section, this is just a quick review from last week, is, we spoke on whether or not was there a prohibition in ancient times? What is the prohibition today? Right? What are we talking about as far as this concept of abortion? Does Judaism take a position that is similar to the position that we are hearing today in the courts in the United States of America? So number one is just be mindful that whether or not to allow whether or not to permit or prohibit abortion has been a debate from ancient times, even during the times of the Romans. The current debate about abortion outside of Jewish law swings in two different views: the value of the right to life of the fetus versus a patient's autonomous right to make an informed medical decision. Does the baby have its own life, or does everything go after the mother? Since man was created in the image of God, we believe as Jews that our body is the property of Borei Olam, of the Creator. Man is only given custodial rights to his body, which is why it's so important that we need to take care of ourselves and do what we can to be healthy. Therefore, the Jewish approach to deciding about an abortion is predicated on the patient's responsibility of being prudent steward of one's life and that of the fetus. Now, a prudent steward addresses medical decisions through the framework of halacha, and therefore, what that means is part of what the conversation is. That was number one. Number two was there are several key sources that we went through last week in the Torah and the Talmud that address abortion. The Torah includes the prohibition of murder described as a person inside a person. And the Talmud teaches us that the prohibition against murder is due to the sixth of the 10th commandments, which is thou shalt not murder. And that idea of do not murder is the source for the prohibition of the source for the prohibition against abortion. Okay. Now, in the case where a fetus threatens the mother's life, the Mishnah teaches us that the fetus should be aborted since the mother's life takes precedence over the fetus. And therefore, God forbid, if there's a situation where mother versus child, mother always wins. Okay, that's where we left off. And what we're going to do today a little bit is we're going to go through the sources in our source sheets over here that describe what does life look like? When does life begin in Judaism? We're looking at a baby. We started speaking about this a little bit last week. A fetus is considered a living being at what point? When does this kid become a full-fledged living human being? And that's part of what we're going to discuss today. I can't always see whoever's coming into the groups, so please forgive me if I'm a little delayed. Okay, so when we talk about when does life begin, we're looking right now, if you're looking at the source sheets, I'm sorry if those of you who are at home, you don't have them, but we're on page number 7. Okay, this is going to be me doing a lot of talking over here. My throat is really dry. I want you to know I got tested for COVID last week, negative. Why? Because my son wasn't feeling well. He had a fever and he felt like he had COVID because he had the similar conditions of COVID. He got tested no COVID. Tested him again, no COVID. He went to the doctor 2 days ago. Doctor said to him, you probably have COVID. He got tested, still no COVID. Tested for strep, no strep. At the end of everything, all the testing, he has a virus. There was a time in the world where people just got viruses and it wasn't this life-threatening, horrific experience. It was just a little bit of a cold. So, Talmud Bavli and Yevamot, we're on number 26, talks about the embryos. Okay? Page 7. Page number is on the bottom left corner, or bottom, 26. You see it? Talmud Bavli says as follows. Okay? Talmud Bavli says that the daughter of a priest who married an Israelite, a non-priest, and he died immediately following the consummation of the marriage, she may immerse in the mikveh and eat truma that evening. Rav Chisda said she can immerse herself and eat for 40 days if she's not pregnant. If she's not pregnant. And now, if she is pregnant, right, for 40 days, it's considered as if it was mere water. So what does that mean? According to this Gemara over here, there's a embryo, and the embryo is considered mere water until 40 days. After 40 days, the baby has a different halachic status, which would, change the mother's ability and permissibility of having the teruma itself. So that's just eating some of the certain sacrifices that were brought in the temple. Let's say they were making a shawarma. Certain shawarmas in the temple were only allowed to be eaten by the priests themselves. The question is whether or not this mother has that status. Mother dies, the husband dies very quickly. She has a baby in her. How does that determine the status of her and the child? So we see over here that maybe an abortion within the first 40 days should be viewed as the removal of mere water, right? It's not the destruction of life. If the prohibition of abortion is based on murder, then maybe within the first 40 days, no harm is committed since the embryo is still mere water. That's, I think, the point that this Gemara is making. Maybe the 40-day marker is insignificant. Now, this is a massive debate in halakha on how to understand it, and we'll try to go through some of these ideas. So look at the next source. This is by Rabbi J. David Bleich. Hi, good morning. Good afternoon, actually. She's over there. We're on page number 7, and we're at source number 27. Rabbi J. Bleich says as follows. He says that the status of an embryo's claim to life during the first 40 days following conception is not entirely clear. Is the prohibition against infanticide operative during the early stage of fetal development during the embryo is depicted as mere water? It would appear that according to the grounds advanced by Chavad Yair, no distinction can be made between the various stages of fetal development since, according to this opinion, feticide is prohibited not because of tantamount to taking human life, because it is the form of destroying the seed. And therefore, according to Rabbi Bleich, he would argue that it doesn't really matter whether or not this baby has the status of mere water. He would say that it's really the destruction of the seed itself. We're talking about the zera, that the seed was unable to mature itself into a life in itself, and therefore it would start from the process of conception itself. This is an opinion, and not all opinions are equal because different poskim tell us different things. So now this is a complication on the ruling of this issue. And there's lots of debate on how we understand it. This classical Talmudic case that permits abortion, in fact, maybe even mandating it, was one in which pregnancy or birth threatened the life of the mother. And this is the only case in which abortion is permitted, right? According to some. And even if it is, which threatens the mother's health, to justify abortion, which the question is whether or not it does. So Rav Moshe Feinstein says in Igrit Moshe, this is on source number 28, he says, since abortion is forbidden as murder for both Gentiles and Jews, therefore the law is that there is a complete prohibition of murder deriving from the verse, you shall not murder, Shemot. Even regarding a fetus, it would be forbidden to kill the fetus to even save someone's life. The exception would be to save the life of the mother during childbirth, not for any other need of the mother, which would definitely be forbidden. So, according to Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, the only justification for abortion is when the continuation of the pregnancy or the childbirth itself poses a direct threat to the mother's life. Other authorities, however, have stated that any threat to the mother's life endangers the pregnancy, such as, let's say, heart disease or kidney disease, high blood pressure, diabetes. All those things can be an indication for abortion. So if the baby itself causes other things in the mother, that would be enough of a reason to say, hey, maybe we should consider the abortion, because remember, we are stewards of our bodies. We don't own our bodies. And that's a very big distinction between what the argument is being posed today in courts. Is it my body and therefore it's my right, I do whatever I want with my body? Or is it the issue of murder? And I'm not going to answer the question. I'm just trying to give you an understanding of what the Jewish thinking on the subject is. That's all I can do. Okay. If anyone watching has any questions, just feel free to unmute yourself or just type away, and I'm happy to answer your questions as well. Okay. Where am I? I'm in number 29. Okay, so you have Rabbi Eliezer Yehuda Wallenberg. Okay, the Tzitz Eliezer. Okay, and he says over here that sometimes abortion can be performed even in less than life-threatening situations. And listen to what he says. He says, if there's a danger to the mother from continuing the pregnancy, one should permit abortion without hesitation. Also, if her health is poor, to cure her or to relieve her from her pains, it is necessary to abort the fetus, even if she is not in actual danger. There is room to permit it based on the halakhic authorities' evaluation of the situation. Okay, so this is a super major leniency. Now the question is, would Jewish law also consider psychological threats to the well-being of the mother as a reason for abortion? Okay, so let's look at what Daniel Eisenberg, who's a doctor, says. This is from Jewish law that I saw an article at H.com. He says as follows: Judaism recognizes psychiatric as well as physical factors in evaluating the potential threat that the fetus poses to the mother. However, the danger posed by the fetus, whether physical or emotional, must be both probable and substantial to justify abortion. The degree of mental illness that must be present to justify termination of a pregnancy has been widely debated by rabbinic scholars without a clear consensus of opinion regarding the exact criteria for permitting abortion in such instances. Nevertheless, all agree that were a pregnancy to cause a woman to become truly suicidal, there would be grounds for abortion. However, several modern rabbinical experts ruled that since pregnancy-induced and postpartum depressions are treatable, abortion is not warranted. Okay, so he's making that case that it's there, but super mindful of, again, we're this. The thing that I want you to walk away with is that Judaism is super open to the possibility of abortion. It's not no. There are circumstances where it is permissible. However, as Jews, we are super careful about when we're going to, God forbid, pull the trigger on taking a life. Because we take that concept of life as being the most important thing. We say that taking a life is, God forbid, is tantamount to destroying a world. Every single human being in the world has so much of a unique mission. Who are we to decide whose blood is redder than the other? Okay, what about genetic disorders and defects? Okay, so let's see what Rabbi Moshe Feinstein says here in source number 31. Okay, he says as follows. He says, even for children for whom the doctors predict a very short lifespan, such as those children who are born with a disease called Tay-Sachs, which through newly developed tests can be diagnosed. I can't read right now. Sorry, what am I saying? Is it parentally? It would be forbidden since there is no danger to the mother and the infant is not a rodev. So God forbid, someone does a Tay-Sachs test, they find out the baby has Tay-Sachs, according to this opinion, you would not be permitted to do the abortion. One could not permit an abortion even though there is a very great suffering involved. It is incontrovertible and clear, as I have written, straightforward halakha according to the words of our masters, are the traditional commentaries and halakhic authorities that abortion would be forbidden as a bona fide murder. For any fetus, legitimate or mamzer, genetically normal or afflicted with Tay-Sachs, are all included in the prohibition according to Jewish law. That was Rav Moshe Feinstein. Okay, so Rav Moshe Feinstein clearly says that Tay-Sachs or birth defects do not justify abortion. Now, this has been debated by a great number of halakhic authorities. While most halakhic authorities forbid abortion for such a fetus, however, let's see what and how Rabbi Eliezer Yehuda Waldenberg, the Tzitz Eliezer, deals with this question. This is number 32 on your source sheets. Abortion within the first 40 days of the pregnancy and also before the fetus has completed 3 months of pregnancy is a much less severe issue than later in the pregnancy. So he's making a clear distinction over here. Therefore, it is possible to permit an abortion within this time period as long as there is yet no fetal movements. If there's an established risk that the child will be deformed and suffer great pain, okay, we don't want to do that. Regarding the termination of the pregnancy due to a detection of Tay-Sachs in the fetus. This is what we're up to, right? After seriously examining all facts concerning the serious question, in my humble opinion, based on what I've already clarified concerning termination of the pregnancy in my works as Eliezer, it would be possible to permit performing an abortion up until the 7th month in this unique circumstance where the consequences of continuing the pregnancies are severe. The abortion must be performed in a manner that there be no danger involved to the mother. From 7 months and on, the matter is much more severe. So this is an opinion that Eliezer, a very competent posek, who held that if, God forbid, a mother carrying a child to the 7th month with Tay-Sachs can have an abortion. Okay, we'll see exactly what that means and how that works exactly. Well, what do you mean, Rabbi? How does he get around the murder? How do we get around the value of life in the baby? So remember, we said there's 2 parts over here. There's a steward. That means the mother has a responsibility to take care for herself. And if having this child is going to have some sort of psychological trauma to the mother itself and prevent the mother from living a normal, functional life, and that will prevent her from having other children in the future, there is room here, according to Eliezer, to perform this abortion so that the mother has the ability of maintaining her own life and, God willing, having other kids in the future. Okay? So, let's just go over again, okay? According to some religions, life begins at conception. In Judaism, that's a debate. Some people say it's conception, and some people say no, after 40 days. Okay? So, therefore, according to the view that a living child is living only after 40 days, according to that, abortion within the first 40 days would not be considered murder at all. However, if abortion is prohibited due to the destruction of potential life, according to that opinion, even before before the 40-day benchmark, it would be prohibited, according to that opinion. It's just opinions. I'm just sharing you where the line of thinking is coming from. Okay, universally accepted, justified for abortion is that there's a threat to the mother. Obviously, there's a debate as to what type of threat would fall into the category of threat to the mother. Some people say that even psychological, threats are a threat. There are others that say no. It's a matter of debate. This is why you need to find a competent posek, rabbi, halakhic authority to consult when you're going through these conversations. Now, since Judaism does not evaluate the relative worth of one's life versus the life of, the possibility of a birth defect, and we generally are super careful about preserving a life. Nevertheless, there are some leading rabbis and rabbinic sources that have sanctioned abortion in the rare instance of fetal deformities and so on and so forth, such as like Tay-Sachs and other psychological things that are threats to the mother. That's where we're up to right now. Now, this is where we're going to talk about the policy debate, okay, and Jewish law. How does this all affect how we vote, how we think in, the world that we're in today? Okay, so that's what I want to do with you right now. So we've seen that abortion is a very serious matter. We understand that abortion is super complicated, and that we're talking about murder, according to some opinions. But Judaism also recognizes that there's room for abortion, obviously. The mother's life, again, is super important. If we want to make sure that she survives, if anything gets in the way of the mother, baby, you're out. Now, the system of Jewish law itself is a whole other, animal. And therefore, we're talking about policy decision making itself. It requires a whole different type of, set of thinking. So, we're looking at this next source over here, Rabbi Yitzchak on, whether, while secular law focuses on the right of the individual, Jewish law focuses on the correctness of the action. There's a difference. We're not talking about, there are people here, I don't even see them, view, admit all. There are all kinds of people, and that's an important distinction to make. Okay, I'll say that again. There's a distinction between, hello? Okay, are you talking to me? And if you're not, then please mute yourself. Otherwise I get confused. Okay, so again, Rabbi Breidowitz takes the position that there's a difference between the right of the individual versus the Jewish law is thinking about the action itself. Is that the correct act? Think about that distinction for a minute. What are my God-given rights? What's the right thing to do? Difference, right? One's about me thinking about my actions moving forward. Other is me just taking from my rights, enjoying my rights, the right to do whatever I want to do. Okay, so let's see what he says. Number 33, Rabbi Yitzchak Breidowitz says, secular law is primarily concerned with who gets to make a decision. Courts and legislatures are thus preoccupied with the advanced directives, segregate decision-making, ethic committees, institutional review boards, etc. This is so because the primary value the law seeks to enshrine is the autonomy of the individual, the choice, the power of the individual. Thus, once we identify the who, we essentially have no interest in the what. By contrast, Jewish law is far more interested in the substance of the decision should be, and in theory, the resolution should not depend on the identity, personal predilections of the decider. Secular law asks who decides. Jewish law asks what is to be decided. Okay, so the question remains, right? Is Judaism pro-choice or pro-life? And what's the answer? What's the Jewish answer? Anyone know? If you were thinking, just using your Jewish thinking head for a minute, you have two possibilities. What's the possibility, as Jews always offer? The third possibility. What's the third possibility? Both. Thank you. That's usually going to be the answer. Right, it depends, both, whatever it is, right? But it's never either or in Judaism, right? There's always going to be a third.
I would say that Judaism is basically pro-life, with exceptions. Right.
Yeah, I hear that, but again, I see what happens if you take one position. This is Tanaz, depends on the situation, 100%. It definitely, this depends on the situation.
No, even in secular law, there are limits. Most...
No, but if you listen closely to the debate that's happening right now in America, there's no middle ground. We're talking about in some cases, we're talking about an abortion that happens the day before the birth, the due date, or the day of. There's something called post-birth abortions, they call it. Right, that's a new term, post-birth abortions. You want to read some fascinating stuff on post-birth abortions, you should read a guy by the name of Professor David Singer. Professor David Singer is the head of the Department of Philosophy and Ethics and Morality in Princeton University, right? And I've said this before here, he says that if your house is on fire and you have a choice between saving your dog and your child, you have a moral responsibility to save your dog because you have unjustly enslaved your dog. And he is, and then from a moral perspective, you have a moral obligation to save your animal that you don't have a right to. Okay, it's a twist. It's a perversion, and this is the ultimate question. Like how do we see ourselves? Like we're talking about rights, responsibility, obligation. what is that? What's the metric that we use? If we use it to leave it to secular law is just interested in how the application of the law, right? But in Judaism, we're more interested in the action itself, and therefore some actions are wrong, and some actions are permissible. Right? We're not going to go ahead and define it as X. This is right or wrong. Well, when we say there's a prohibition to murder, is that universally true? Is there no circumstance where you can't kill someone else?
Self-defense.
So there is, right? Because you can't take a position that is 100%, because there's always going to be a scenario with that gray, aspect to it. So how do we find that balance? Right, in ourselves and our society. It's interesting for me, America, I love this country. I feel very blessed to have been born in this country. I feel that we've lived in the most amazing time in history, and we live in the most amazing country in history. But the challenge of this country is that this country always responded to its issues in extremes. There was no middle ground. There's no middle ground conversation. You're either this or that. There's no middle space for that middle ground conversation. And I think it has to do with the nature of how this country started, standing against the monarchy and looking for its freedom and how we interpret what those freedoms are, and so on and so forth. All right, so we have in the next source we have Michael Brody, okay, and he says like this. He's going to say over here in this piece, it's in the best interest of Jews to support civil rights, even when such rights grant people a license to act immoral. Okay, let's see how and what he says over here. He says as follows. He says, the decision by Jewish organizations to support, oppose, or remain neutral in a dispute when certain people desire to expand their civil rights is not determined solely by whether the group under discussion is one generally in compliance with Jewish law or morality. It is in the best interest of Judaism to support the continued granting of basic civil rights to all, while making clear our moral opposition to the underlying conduct of those who exercise their freedom in violation of basic ethical norms of Judaism. That's important. Again, we got to make it clear what our position is, but there's no question about it. We should definitely support civil rights. This is his position over here. Indeed, the record is full of even Orthodox Jewish organizations advocating support for religions and beliefs that are completely foreign to the Jewish law or ethics. For example, in Decker versus O'Donnell, the Union of Orthodox Jewish Congregations filed an amicus brief supporting the right of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Milwaukee to use taxpayers-provided money for job training. Right? In Webster versus Reproductive Health Services, a Good Israel of America filed an amicus brief arguing that a state's funding that human life begins at conception violated the First Amendment, but that abortion rights should only be fundamental in the exceptional case of a threat to maternal life or an abortion mandated by a sincere religious belief, whether such beliefs are Jewish or Gentile. It's hard to justify these and many other public positions, except by asserting that our legislative agenda is not solely based on seeking to legislatively prohibit that which is prohibited by Jewish law. Rather, what we seek to codify in the secular law must be based on the balance between Jewish law mandates and the real politic factors. Legislative goals which do not necessarily seek to enforce Jewish law can be well supported from a pure Jewish law perspective. For example, in 1977, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein was asked what statutory changes Orthodox Judaism should seek from the New York State government on the issue of time of death. And he replied that Orthodox Judaism would seek legislative mandate that allowed each person or family to determine the time of death in accordance with their own religious or personal beliefs. He did not suggest that proper governmental policy to seek that New York State should be urged to adopt Jewish law in this area. The public policy advocated by Rabbi Feinstein in the context of time of death, one of Orthodox Judaism seeking to allow Jews to follow the Jewish tradition without forcing our standards on other believers, was preferred one. This was notwithstanding the certainty that some people, given this new freedom, will adopt a standard for a time of death which violates Jewish law by withdrawing care before time permitted in Jewish law, thus committing suicide or even murder. Rabbi Feinstein did not feel compelled to seek the enforcement of Jewish law by the secular state. So this is important. Like, how do we respond? Well, no, it depends. All right, what is the policy that makes the most sense for the place that we're in is generally going to be the right response. I'm not here to mandate my Orthodox Judaism on the world around me. And I think that should be the general approach of the Jewish community to the Jewish community, not just to secular law. Right? And I say that all the time. Like I'm not here to tell you what to do, what not to do. I'm just here to go ahead and educate you. When you have questions, I'm here to inform. That's it. My job isn't to be the jury, the judge, or anything like that. My job is just go ahead and just explain to you this is what we as Jews believe. Give you the opportunity, the education. That's why I'm so hell-bent on making sure that every class you have sources. I want you to walk away and say, well, I went to the class, I actually have it in my notes. I could pull it out for you. Here it is, on the 11th page, number 32. This is what that source means. And I'm going to show you both sides. I'm not taking a position because I'm not a halachic authority to give you a position. But what I can do as an educator is hopefully inform you enough so that you are able to inform yourself. When you speak to a rabbi, you have enough background to go ahead and hear an answer that makes the most sense for the situation that you're in. So the attitude toward the interplay of public, and Jewish life policy can be seen in this position over here as one of the most prominent Jewish agencies. This is that Good Israel. This is what they wrote. Look at the next source for a second. A Good Israel has taken the position on a host of legislative and public policies, issues that touch upon the fundamental moral concerns and impact upon family unit. One illustration of a Good Israel's approach is in this area is that the context of abortion. Jewish tradition teaches that a human fetus has a status and dignity, and that termination of pregnancy raises profound moral concerns. A Good Israel accordingly has urged Supreme Court to reconsider its holding on Roe versus Wade and support legislation and restriction of abortion on demand. At the same time, in line with its support for religious freedom, Good Israel opposes initiatives that would make abortion unlawful even in situations where termination of pregnancy is mandated by the religious law, as is, for example, on the Sinaitic Jewish law that pregnancy endangers the life of the mother. So we're not taking a position. We want to go ahead and create a space where we could have the conversation. We're going to have the middle ground, not pro-choice, pro-life, but that we're going to look at the situation itself that a person is in, and we will determine how to apply what we call halacha, how to apply the law in that particular situation. I have more people in the waiting room. Hold on a second. Admit. Okay. So now it's important to keep in mind that even Rabbi Waldenberg, right, the authority most renowned, that Sisel Yezer for his leniency in the case of abortion, stressed the gravity of abortion. And he says as following. Look at the next source. He said, all Jewish people are strictly commanded not to behave in a casual manner regarding the termination of pregnancy. And there is a great responsibility placed both on one asking the halachic question and the one being asked. It's gotta be. Marie, can you mute yourself? Thanks. I'll do it for you. Where are you? Hold on a second. More participants. Okay. I'm just muting everybody. Okay, if you want to, you can unmute yourselves if you need to unmute yourselves. I just don't want to have any background noise. Mechila. Okay. So the Jewish position on abortion is about balancing the seriousness of the issue with the necessity of freedom to make individual rulings. It's super complicated, and therefore, I want to conclude with this idea from Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, and I'm not going. Let's just look at this next piece over here. This is from Rabbi Fran. Let's see what he says, number 37 over here, and we'll just open it up for questions and comments and so on and so forth. I'm on page number 10. On the bottom of page number 10, we're about to read number 37. This is from Rabbi Yisachar Fran's book. What's that?
It's right here, you can see it.
That's okay.
But can we just go back to Bible for a second? Okay. So on one hand, they're saying, we want you to reconsider and put the limitations on allowing people to have abortion.
Right.
But that's also in keeping with their own idea.
Correct. They're not enforcing their own. The point that I was making is that the position they're taking is a position that makes sense for them. It's not a position that's based solely on halacha. That's all I'm saying.
No, but they are asking for those limitations.
They are. They're asking what they think makes the most sense for their community and for the United States. The point that I was making.
But they're not considering that this is a rule for all people.
Correct.
Non-Jews as well.
100%. They are considering it. They are considering it.
No, because they're really basing it basically on if a mother's life is in danger. They're not considering that there may be other compelling reasons that people would want an abortion. That should be their choice.
Right. So you're right. It's never just choice in Judaism.
I understand, but what I'm saying is, on the one hand, you're saying, no,
Yeah.
they're not going to say to the government.
I was saying that there. I was saying that in general. I was saying generally, the general policy is that as Jews, we do not push halacha onto society. Okay, that's what I'm saying. Now, it happens to be in this case over here, they're taking a position. It's a position. This is the good. This is not my position. This is the good Yisrael's position, and it's a position.
But they are taking the Judaic position.
It's always going to be a Judaic position. The question is whether or not this is a halachic position that is going to be clear on both sides. So, for example, Agudas Yisrael is saying that they want to reconsider holding Roe versus Wade. Roe versus Wade basically gave women the rights to say that women's bodies are their bodies and they have full control of their body. That's what Roe versus Wade. According to Roe versus Wade, a woman could go have an abortion the day of her due date. That's Roe versus Wade. So do we think that Roe versus Wade went too far? We'll say, yeah, we think that they went too far. Should we completely abolish Roe versus Wade and women should not have the right? Because remember, in this country, it's about extremes, either yes or no. So we'll say like this, yes, we want to amend Roe versus Wade, but we want to amend it with this idea of that there is a room for abortion when it comes to, the health of the mother as a, what's it called? Now, what does the health of the mother look like? Right? What does that even look like? Well, we could say all kinds of things. We said that psychological reasons can be the health of the mother, right? We could say that it's if the mother's threatened, but for physical reasons. What the health of the mother is what the court would determine, as in that situation to determine whether or not we could apply the abortion or no abortion in that case.
Well, I'm concerned that, and I haven't really read Roe versus Wade, but I think in most states, they do put limitations in. I don't know particularly, but I don't think that it's very common that they're going to allow that governments, most states will allow abortion up to the day of giving birth.
There's something like 8 million abortions that happen in America every year. I don't know.
I heard something like 80 million abortions since Roe versus.
Something like that, yeah. Some crazy number. Again, I'm not arguing on.
Because when you state it that way, it sounds very severe, but if most of the abortions, say 80% are in the first trimester or even in the second trimester, it's not, as crazy as it sounds like. You're giving birth the next day, you're murdering that child.
Right.
I don't think that, I don't know the statistics, but I don't think that most states would allow it up to the, day of birth.
I'm just saying because it's unclear, and because Roe versus Wade is so extensive, a woman who, let's say, decides to go ahead and have it on her 9th month, the day before her due date, she's not going to. That's not murder for her.
What?
That's not murder.
I understand, but.
That's the question. The question is when does this?
On where she is, where are they allowed?
Anywhere in America. It's impossible to show me a case where a woman got an abortion in her 9th month, okay, and that she went to jail for murder.
Maybe she's not in jail.
But that's my point. Meaning, the question is what
I don't think that it's permitted, and certainly don't think in New York it's permitted.
They passed the law that you can have an abortion up until you're give birth. They passed it.
Who?
The New York State legislature.
I don't know. I don't even know all the laws. I don't know all the laws, and certainly I've had after this class, I'll pull up. I know for sure in California they do, and I know that right now. I know that California has gone as far as saying is that because of Texas's ban on abortion, California is willing to not only pay women to come to California and have their abortion and put them in hotels and whatever it is, and there's pretty much no limitation on. There's no it doesn't say your first or second trimester only. It doesn't say there's no limitations
The
to.
point that I'm trying to make really
Yeah.
is that I don't think all American
You're thinking from a moral perspective. I'm talking about it from a legal perspective. That's the difference over here. See, at the end of the day, what's the law?
But I'm saying the moral perspective impacts the legal perspective.
I think that it should, right? But it doesn't always necessarily. Legalities and morality are not always aligned 100%.
Well, maybe it is in Texas.
It's not always 100% aligned. Now, do I again? Like I think again, from my position is that we have to look at each case, and we should not make a universal law that says, yeah, a woman can do whatever she wants, whenever she wants. There has to be some kind of limitations. We are talking about a life. My sister-in-law just had a baby boy a few hours, like 5-6 hours ago, and I can't imagine.
Who, your sister?
My sister-in-law, my wife's brother's wife. So I'm a proud uncle today again, and it's just I don't understand how a woman. I'm not judging women that get abortions. Obviously, I'll never understand what it means to carry a baby, the responsibility of what that means and what it does to you as women, holding it, and I'm not in a position to, but.
If you're in a position where just think if a woman is living a miserable life and maybe her husband's not in the picture and she's got a bunch of kids and she's.
Yeah, listen, there is, I get it. I'm
I can very well.
100%. The question is, when do we draw the line? Right? Is it, she had 3 months already, she knows, it's 4 months. I'm saying, when do we draw, like 5 months, 6 months, 7 months, when do we draw the line? Yeah.
Everyone's upset about the fact that the day of baby being born, instead of like just saying, you know what, you don't have to sign off this child, never let them know who the parent is, and just put it in like up for adoption. I know that they have to do this line, but it's stunning to me that can happen. That
Right.
Full like 8 or whatever. Full
Right.
developed
Baby.
child born
Yeah.
can not be looked at as, it makes you wonder how human beings.
This guy, Peter Singer, Peter Singer, not David Singer, I call him David, is Peter Singer. He believes that if let's say you didn't know the child was born with a deformity, you have until about 16 months to kill the baby after he's born. Why? He says because the only time it becomes immoral is when the baby is aware of the pain itself. And that awareness happens between 16 to 18 months.
Does that mean that baby will not be pain?
I'm not aware. No, a baby will feel pain,
Of course.
but he's talking about being aware of what's happening. There's awareness that's not there. Again, I disagree with him, obviously. Again, but when you read through the far reaches of the imagination when it comes to morality, it's terrifying.
I think you also have to look at the very huge thing happening right now is that so many people cannot have children. So we are like sort of off balance with how we're looking at.
But that should not interfere with.
What's going on in the entire.
That should not interfere with women not today having less kids should not interfere with how we understand abortion. Meaning there are going to be circumstances, God forbid, where a woman needs to have an abortion. I don't want to live in a world where it's absolutely forbidden.
No, right.
Again, and I think that's the point. Like, we're talking about extremes.
I haven't seen anything in the literature about rape. Or would that fall under the psychological?
Well, listen, if a woman is raped, then she knows that she's looking for something that's going to be within the first 40 days, she'll get an abortion. It's not going to be a problem.
Is that permissible?
Where we went through it. There are some authorities, it depends on how we look at it.
Is it?
Yeah, I can't say with certainty. Of course, I'll always be surprised. I would be surprised if a woman went to a posek today and said, I was raped, can I get an abortion? He'll say no.
Why would they allow it then?
Because first of all, within the first 40 days, there's a debate as to whether or not that's considered a living embryo or just mere water, like we stated earlier.
But even so.
Is it a life?
You know,
We said last week, that a life, according to the Gemara, is determined by when it has all of its organs, and that takes 40 days, which is why 40 days from conception is, and that's when the soul comes in, and that's when, yeah.
but on a different aspect of it, why would they allow an abortion for somebody who was raped? Because that, whatever fetus will become a regular human being. Yes, they could put it up for adoption, they should not, wouldn't know each other, but why would they say you can get an abortion.
Let's say it haunts the mother. It create, I don't know enough of the circumstances. I would just say that I would be surprised today if a woman comes in and she's like, I don't want this child. It was a horrible act that brought this life into the world, and today we have the ability of getting of terminating that pregnancy early on before it's considered a life. According to most authorities, I would imagine that it would be permitted. Again, I'm not a posek, I don't know. I'm just, just based on what I've read and seen and heard in situations that unfortunately I'm aware of, that's how the psak came generally.
You familiar with that organization in Israel that promotes giving birth to, what's it called, that organization?
No.
That promotes, instead of abortion, to give birth, and they say they'll find out. It's a big organization.
Something wanted, something saved.
What's it called? It's from a fry.
Let me finish, ladies. Let me finish this one piece over here, and we're going to go through all that. I don't want to. It's harder of you guys, I'm imagining, to hear what's going on over here. I don't have a microphone for everybody, but God willing. So let's listen to Rabbi Reuven. He says, a woman interested in Judaism went to study in Jerusalem. She's learning about Torah and mitzvot, making real progress. One day, she announced to her teacher that she has decided to leave. Why are you leaving? Teacher asked her, because I am pregnant, she says. I want to terminate my pregnancy. But why do you want to terminate your pregnancy? The teacher asked. Because I want to embark on a career. This pregnancy is just going to make things too difficult. What does your husband say? He asks her. He stands by my decision. The teacher sees that he is out of his depth. Listen, he says. If you're going to have an abortion, you should be aware that it is a dangerous procedure. Let me take you to a great rabbi, a holy person. Let's ask him for a blessing that you go through this abortion safely. I'll go along and to act as your interpreter. The woman agrees. Teacher takes her to Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. I would like a blessing. She says, Sir Shlomo, you see, I'm going to terminate my pregnancy. Why would you want to terminate your pregnancy? Asked Rabbi Shlomo Zalman. Because I want to pursue a career. What kind of career do you want to pursue? I want to be a doctor. And why do you want to become a doctor? Because doctors save lives. So Shlomo Zalman smiles and asks, really? What is so important about saving lives? The woman is startled by the question. She gives Rosh Shlomo Zalman a strange look, as if she was wondering if he was senile. What's so important about saving lives, she says? Saving lives is the most important thing in the world. All of a sudden, the significance of what she said just hits her. She looks at Rosh Shlomo Zalman and she points to her abdomen. You don't mean this, do you? Rosh Shlomo Zalman says, it can become a life. A living human being. The woman nods in acceptance. And again, I think that's how we need to frame this conversation, right? We're talking about we talk about so many different things. Well, what's her right? What am I allowed to do? Yeah, that's a question. But just be mindful. We're talking about a baby. We're talking about a life. We're talking about something that has the power of bringing so much good and beauty to a world. Are we really going to take the position that we could understand when to terminate this life, yes or no? Yes, of course there are complications. Of course there are going to be circumstances where we're going to have to do things that are going to be morally questionable. I get it. But just to go ahead and just to go act and just do whatever we want because that's how I feel, because I'm in control, I think is a mistake. We need to, when we deal with this issue, and in general with most issues over here, we need to be super humble and understanding that there's very little that we truly fully understand and appreciate. I'm going to answer your questions in a minute. Good question over here. Someone asked, Silvana said, will you be discussing abortion and incest? Innocent, this is a great question. There are certainly situations like that, like incest, where abortion is on the table. Judaism, again, there's several things. From this conversation, you walk away with that, yes, there is room in Judaism to get an abortion. And incest would definitely be one of those circumstances. I'm not a posek again, but certainly I'm sure that any competent person who hears a situation like that would probably agree today that yes, you could turn it. Now why? Why would it change? It changed, by the way. Think of it like this. We know when Dinah was raped, right? They didn't give her an abortion. She had the baby. Yeah, she had the baby. The baby's name was Osnat, right? Osnat marries Yosef. Osnat was later adopted by Potiphar. Okay, he married his niece. Okay, why didn't they get an abortion back then? Well, maybe they didn't have the technology. or maybe they didn't try, or whatever it is. But today we live in a different world. Most women today, I mean, there was a woman who just gave birth. She was, I think the oldest lady that ever gave birth was 60 something years old, and she just gave birth like a month or two ago. All right, the world has changed. We have different technologies today. Women can carry and carry babies at different times that were not unfathomable before. It was miraculous, right? We have better, healthier conditions for women to give birth, and there's less deaths today happening at births. Before it was like a 50% chance. 100 years ago, if a woman was pregnant, she had a 50% chance of either giving birth to a healthy baby or a stillborn. That's changed today dramatically, right? Like you have like a 98% chance of getting pregnant and delivering naturally and having a healthy baby. Naturally means abortion, whatever it is, right? The world has changed. And therefore, because the world has changed, the way in which we're going to apply halakha and the way in which we're going to think about the things we're doing is going to change as well. Okay, U.S. law trivializes the most difficult topics. No woman undergoes an abortion on a whim. True. Much pain, both emotional and physical, is connected with such a decision. Secular law does not take that into consideration. Tanaz, I agree 100%. It does not take that, and that's, again, I think that is the difference, I would say, between Jewish law and just legal law. That in Judaism we do take into account the emotional, psychological reality, the circumstance that a person is in to determine whether or not what the right course of action is in this given situation. Okay, I'm opening the floor to you now. Please make as many comments as you want. Anyone have any other questions, comments, concerns? Feel free to speak up now. I'm happy to take the questions. This was an exhausting topic. It was not easy. It's super, and by the way, this is a drop in the bucket. This is me editing out most of the conversation. If anyone here who was on this class wants the actual source material, I'm happy to send it to you. It's fascinating. You can read through it. Very interesting stuff. A lot of very, very practical things in here as well. But for the most part, the Jewish view is that it depends on the situation. That's my best answer. What's the Jewish way of thinking about abortion? The Jewish way of thinking about abortion is we're going to look at each situation and carefully examine the situation that this woman is in right now, and based on the circumstance that she's in, we will determine whether or not an abortion or keeping this fetus is the best particular course of action for her and the baby. There is no right one answer. There's only the answer that makes sense for the person that's going through the situation that they are in. All right, go ahead.
He's always eating up.
Marie, I can't hear you. You're fading in and out. Say it again. What?
I said, I said the Jewish thought on abortion is always, it's very right, because every time it depends on the person, on the woman.
Right.
There's no fixed law.
100%. Again, and I said this last week, when we're talking about abortion, there are young women today that get abortions because they were in a relationship that they weren't prepared to be in. And someone was being somewhat irresponsible and not using birth control. They're having a sexual relationship outside of the context of marriage, and therefore they want an abortion, right?
Yeah. You should get it.
Yeah, you should get it, right? Take the morning after pill if you realize that you didn't, you weren't, whatever it is, and therefore it doesn't become an issue of abortion anymore. It becomes an issue of something else. But this is a question of taking responsibility.
My question: the woman does it for reasons that you just said, maybe she had relation with somebody else, not gonna be her husband. Does she deserve to go to hell?
Does she deserve to go to hell? No, no one deserves to go to hell.
If she ended the baby's life just because she was promiscuous.
Listen, I'll say this. I can't judge a person's, moral standing because of their actions. I don't know what the relationship is like. I don't know. There's so much to unpack there, Marie. I will say this. Whatever choices people have made, good or bad, Okay, over here, whatever choice that was, the right choice or the wrong choice, it doesn't really matter. To me, what matters is that, that the person itself is growing, that the person themselves are working on becoming greater human beings. We can't allow our past decisions to define where we're going in life moving forward. And therefore, it is what it is. It happens. We make mistakes. There are people that have done much worse than an
But
abortion.
she killed the person in the meantime.
Well, it depends when she did it. If she did it within the first 40 days, then you could argue that she did not kill a person.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
But if she did it later, then she killed the person.
It depends when. It depends when she did it, and
And
how
what
she did it.
circumstances?
Right, it depends on the circumstances. Again, there's a lot to unpack there. It's not so pashut, not so simple just to throw her into the category of immorally going to burn in hell for the rest of her life for making that decision.
So, I'm looking at Brody Way.
Yes.
And it didn't have restrictions according to viability.
Right.
No, not viability, it was based on trimester. And then there was another, something that overruled another case that said, and the states have they could do according to viability.
Right.
And that could be like 24 weeks. So I don't see anything that says up to, we could do it.
I'll show you. I'll show it to you. All right. I want to thank you all for coming. I'm just shutting this camera off because you don't need me anymore. Goodbye.